We're now on part 3 of the animated history of Poland. If you haven't seen 1 and 2, go back and check them out. But it's been so interesting learning things about Poland that I didn't learn at school. So here is from post-World War II until modern day.
Poland's post-1945 state was one that was pretty unrecognizable from anything that came before it. The most glaring detail was the new republic's borders. The Soviet Union forcibly annexed the eastern half of the nation they had originally invaded in September of 1939. In compensation for this, they awarded Poland the territories of Silesia, Pomerania, and Prussia from Germany. Multiples of millions of Poles and Germans were forcibly expelled from their respective homes, in the largest ethnic redistribution in history.
So they basically went wash, shoved Poland over completely, basically.
After the war, the infamous Nuremberg trials tried the Nazi leaders for the Holocaust and war crimes committed on Polish soil. The Soviets escaped similar trials for their own war crimes since they joined the Allies in the late stages of the war. The Soviet regime would never answer for the Katyn massacre of 22,000 Polish officers, the deportation of 1.6 million POWs to Stalin's gulags, or the rape and pillage committed by the Red Army.
A couple of things. It's really interesting to know that even in recent years, there has been Germans, or basically Germans that were maybe secretaries and office workers that are now being tried for war crimes and the atrocities that happened even up to this day. But in terms of, the Soviets not being punished too for things like the gulags and stuff and Katyn Forest, they were the victors at the end of the day, and the victors almost write history, right? And so it also has that fear of Russia. We've spoken about how the Poles weren't on the victory march and things because Churchill basically did what Stalin said, and you can sort of understand why, because it was such a long war, you just didn't want any more. And it's selfish, I suppose, against the Poles, but tough decisions, I suppose, had to be made. And that's not making excuses or anything, but you can understand why certain things happened, like these issues with the Soviets being swept under the carpet.
Poland remained behind the Iron Curtain as a puppet state for the Soviet Union. The Soviet regime set up the Polish United Workers' Party, a communist party creating what we now call the Polish People's Republic, an important Eastern Bloc member and buffer state to the west. The Warsaw Pact, signed in 1955 as an opposition to NATO, gave the Bolsheviks greater control over Poland's army. The government of pre-war Poland remained in exile in the UK and was refused to be recognized by Stalin. The Cold War loomed as both East and West became nuclear powers. The Western Allies secretly began talks of starting a third war to defeat the Soviet Union called Operation Unthinkable. However, this was abandoned as nuclear bombs changed the nature of war completely. The first few years were the most brutal. Land, industry, and infrastructure were seized by the government, and rather than wealth distribution and prosperity, the resulting brand of socialism simply created a method of resource and value extraction to the Soviet Union. This was called the Stalinist era, an era characterized by untold poverty. In true Iron Curtain fashion, Poland stood close to the front lines of a clash of ideology. The student strike in 1968 against the regime was brutally suppressed. This decade would also see what remained of Poland's Jewish population immigrate en masse to Israel, ending the Jewish chapter in Polish history. By 1970, the port cities of Gdańsk, Gdynia, and Szczecin exploded in protests as these areas were subject to particularly harsh working and living conditions. The government would crack down and protests would continue in 1976 and again in 1980, by which point the government was $20 billion in debt. Lech Wałęsa started the first workers' union called Solidarity, quickly becoming a political lobbyist group for change. Solidarity organized the first nationwide workers' strike in 1981. The government tried in vain to enact martial law to stop the spread of chaos. However, the winds of change were upon the Eastern Bloc.
The Polish people realized that communism was not a good thing. It was not working for them. It wasn't looking out for the little people. It's like most of these regimes, it looks out for the top. I'm sure Stalin was well fed, for example. It's like over in North Korea at the moment. A certain Kim Jong-un, or Il, whatever his last bit is, I'm sure he's not thin and poverty stricken, is he? However, his people are. And this is the same thing here. And it doesn't work. I've got no problem in saying communism does not work. And it's great to see that the people won. The people didn't want it, and they fought back the suppressors, basically, which is amazing. It's amazing, and it's a sign of hope, and that people power does win the day.
And in the 1989 election, the communists lost nearly all of the allowable contested seats in parliament. The wheel began turning, and change was inevitable. The Communist Party was disbanded, the constitution amended, and the centralized control of the economy was abolished. The government in exile was finally allowed to return home. Since then, things have changed pretty drastically. In 1999, the Third Polish Republic officially joined NATO, signaling a huge westward shift in foreign policy. By 2004, they became part of the European Union, helping stabilize the growing economy. It has been a very long and hard road for Poland. The very center of World War II tensions in Poland had left the nation in rubble.
Looking at the map, it's so interesting because Russia, and the USSR, whatever you want to call it, had so much territory, basically. And over recent years, they've just lost it because people are realizing it's not a good political system to be in. It's, you want to be able to control your own destiny. And as you see, all these countries are joining the European Union, they're joining NATO, and they are becoming one. I said I am gutted that we left the European Union. I'm gutted because I think it's the wrong thing. We are stronger as one. And I'm just thinking, I'm trying to put myself in, for example, Putin's head, which is not easy to do. But they have lost so much territory that wasn't theirs in the first place, obviously, but so much territory that they stole. And so it's almost a panic that he's having, a panic, and doing everything he can to try and steal it back, isn't he? And I don't think he will. If we stay like this, a part of NATO and the European Union, we are stronger as one. Hopefully, the more we have in NATO, the more we have in the European Union, the safer we will be. We just always have that looming threat. I say looming for NATO, and it's looming. And obviously, Ukraine aren't in NATO, so they are suffering at the moment. But always got that issue of Russia, and how do you stop that?
It has been a very long and hard road for Poland. The very center of World War II tensions in Poland had left the nation in rubble, only to be then absorbed into the oppressive regime of Stalin's communist bloc. A common observation made by no less than Winston Churchill is that while the war had brought an end to totalitarianism and tyranny in Western Europe, in Eastern Europe, it had really only just begun. And sometimes it's important to remember that. Poland's post-communist prosperity has made it one of the Eastern Bloc's success stories. And who knows, maybe one day, Poland can into space.
It's a fascinating story. It is a fascinating story. I said it's like rising like a phoenix. Poland, one thing I actually love about going to Poland is that you can still see all the history. You can still see the buildings with bullet holes in and things, and the signs of the wars that they've been through. But then you look around another corner and it is modern. It's vibrant. The youth is coming through in the country, and it's amazing. And you've got the reminder, and you've got the way that you can look to the future as well. It's an incredible place. And I'm loving learning about Poland even more. Thank you so much for watching. Honestly, it means so much. Please do make sure you subscribe. Give me some suggestions. If you've got any videos you want me to look at and react to that are based on Poland, please put a link down in the comments below. And I will catch you next time.